episode number 149 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me, Adam Candy, that's the 2 E's, no Y version, and the return of Dustin Gowker. You can follow both of them over on the Twitter machine. It's free. Get to it. Smash the button at Dustin Gowker, at Adam Candy, 2 E's, no Y. If you hate yourself, you can follow me at Matt Brown M2. Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Apple, all the places you get all your podcasts. Be sure, go in, subscribe, rate, review. We really do appreciate all that. We've got a nice little piece we will discuss, I imagine, here at length that Brad, kind of an opinion piece on ESPN. I'm curious to get y'all's thoughts on that. Of course, we'll have the state roundup like we always do. We'll get into all the earnings calls and what was said or maybe what not was said on all of those. But let's go ahead. Adam, let's kick things off here. Over on the BetMGM side of things, when we are talking about, hey, look, we knew it was going to cost, it was going to be expensive to play in New York, and BetMGM, I guess, just wants everyone to know that.
Well, I guess BetMGM is into stating the obvious these days, because we looked at the New York tax structure right when it came out, 51% tax rate, the highest in the nation, and said, we're not sure how anyone's going to make any money in New York. And yet, the thing we have to keep in mind is that 9 sports books agreed to pay this. And in fact, there were more applicants than the state of New York actually chose to put into the market. So 51% is the agreed upon tax rate for everyone. Well, what we've started to hear is, of course, we heard from Caesars a while back that they were going to cut their heavy promotional spend that they were doing in New York. They didn't tie it directly to New York's tax rate, but we know that there's a high cost of doing business in New York in the first place. And then on BetMGM's investor call this week, they gave some quotes that to me sounded like, well, what did you expect? They essentially said, well, the house can't always lose, and that it's not an environment that's sustainable when it comes to the tax rate in New York. Okay, fair. No one involved in this believes that 51% is a reasonable tax rate for the state of New York. But the problem here is you proposed it, you agreed to it. What do you think anyone is going to do when you come back and say, we can't afford it? They're going to laugh, and they're going to say, okay, well, you had a chance to say you didn't want to pay this tax rate in the first place. And look, we understand, as people who are inside this bubble every day, that the game plan was to agree to the tax rate, deal with it for a couple of years, and then come back to the legislature and try to change it later. But here's the problem you're going to encounter. And guys, we've discussed this on the podcast before. The success that we've seen in New York, the fact that it's generating close to the revenue projection for the state of $500 million in tax revenue, I can't imagine who in New York is going to be amenable to the companies coming back and saying, hey, we need to pay less. They're going to say, no, we like what you're doing right now.
So, Dustin, it almost feels like a game of chicken, right? Because, I mean, the books, I guess, in theory, could pull out of the state. But then if they pull out of the state, then their competitors stay, and then they have more of the market share, then more of the money, and then maybe it doesn't really matter if there's a 51% tax rate and all this. And so it's kind of like the books are sitting here going, no, you blink, and I know you blink. It's the whole Spider-Man thing kind of going on, pointing at each other here. And so, yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like, at least if you're a New York legislator right now, that there is a lot of priority in trying to change the structure.
Yeah, there's zero priority. You also took I was going to lead with it's a giant game of chicken, right? That is, you hit the nail on the head. Why am I even here? I can just retire. Matt can do the analysis for me. But yeah, it's like, you don't want to be in, and it's a game of chicken with the state too. Like, okay, you're gonna stop promoting it. So like you could, if all the companies kind of pull back in New York, then you're gonna stop seeing growth and maybe even pull back in New York if they're legit and saying we're going to stop marketing spend, we're not going to really try to grow the market anymore, and then New York may say, oh, okay, what's going on? Maybe we do need to reduce the tax rate. Like, is any of that really going to work? I don't know, but yeah, it at core is a giant game of chicken between the state and the books and other books that are there. Like, are you just willing to say, yeah, we're going to lose market share in New York, the biggest state in the country, because with legal sports betting, because it's not sustainable? Like, you're still trying to show a growth plan, and for a future state where New York maybe isn't that kind of a high tax rate. So who knows? But yeah, I agree with you. Nobody's coming back and fixing this rule, this law right away, because they're going to take the money for now, and things get dire or people start pulling out or the numbers don't look as good, then maybe we'll see some change in New York.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, it seems to me like you kind of take a look at this, and it's one of those deals where it would take almost everybody getting together at the same time and saying, hey, we're all going to pull out together, right? We're doing this together and we're all going to pull out, and then they'll have to work with us. But that is, as you and I well know, that is never going to happen.
You vote for me and I'll vote for you, right? Yeah,
right.
No, it never works out that way. And we've already heard from companies like FanDuel that not only is FanDuel leading the market in New York, but we've heard from FanDuel overall, we're going to get into this when we talk about earnings calls, that FanDuel's continuing with an aggressive customer acquisition plan. Like, they have no plans to pull back. And if you want to cede market share right now, Peter Jackson, the CEO of Flutter, has already said, we will be happy to take that market share that you are willing to give up. So you look at New York's situation, and Dustin mentioned, from the legislative side, look, they looked at this year. They looked at adding more licenses this year. They looked at saying, okay, maybe we'll add 5 this year, 7 within 2 years. And then when it was brought up by our Matthew Waters and others to say, well, that means that you would drop the tax rate to 35%. That's what the Matrix says, right? And then Senator Adabo et al. Said, oh, well,
wait
I don't know that
minute.
we're much interested in lowering that tax rate right now. So, yeah, if everyone were to pull out, Matt, of course, it would affect things. But there are other questions to be answered here that go a lot deeper that we're not going to be able to get into today. And Caesars is going to be the interesting test case, I think, for this. What is the lifetime value of a player that you acquire in New York, right? How hard do you have to work to keep that player at potentially a lower cost than acquiring a new player? Does New York ever do iGaming? And if New York ever does do iGaming, then how can you increase the lifetime value of that player that you already brought in for sports betting, which maybe makes it so that you don't need to spend the same amount of money bringing customers? So there are a lot of questions to be answered here right now. But I think the one we can answer definitively is, are the New York legislators going to come back and change the tax rate that the sports books agreed to 5 months ago? No, they're not.
The tax rate is too damn high. That's what they're screaming. The tax rate is too damn high.
The tax rate that we wanted.
Yeah.
Dustin, let's head over to some earning calls here, and let's start with some of these, the big bullet points of these, and what did you pull from what Caesars had to say?
Yeah, I'll just run through them kind of rapid fire, I think, and then Adam can weigh in what he heard too. But yeah, Caesars, continuing to say it's looking toward profitability, cutting marketing spend so that it can be on a road to be profitable. That's not any kind of secret there. They've been saying that for a little while. There's this huge push around New York and really nationwide, and so they're pulling back on that. I will say, I was just in New York. I saw a lot of Caesars commercials, so either those were already booked and bought, or this is nonsense. But I saw JB Smoove Caesar quite a lot in New York while I was there. So yeah, the Caesars is continuing again, saying we did this big push. We're gonna hope that established our brand, move on from there. FanDuel, kind of shocking, and I would be worried if I was everyone else that they're just saying we're going to keep spending on marketing. Like, there's why in this environment where we're number one, where we're acquiring customers left and right, why would we stop doing that? So they're already a dominant number one in U.S. across in almost every market. Like, if I'm everybody else who's like looking toward profitability, cutting spend, like, I'm worried, because now you're setting up FanDuel. If they're continuing to burn cash on this, they're going to acquire even more market share. And then when they're ready to turn toward profitability, they're looking like in really good shape. So that was, I'm sure, taken notice around the industry and by FanDuel's leading competitors here in the U.S. We had, this wasn't from earnings calls, but on the heels of earnings calls, I think we've talked about DraftKings stock. Not very good. CEO Jason Robbins has said that he would buy more stock if he could, but there's some rules that he went through that he can't rate the second because of selling shares recently and the profit that he can make off of that. Anyway, this comes on the heels of, I forget the exact quote, but he wanted to make us all everyone regret, not us personally, but make everyone regret selling DraftKings, so that it became at one point was down trading near $10 a share, I believe, and it's rebounded a little bit from that, but not much. But he's been famous defender of the DraftKings model, its future, and the stock price, and out there saying he's going to buy more as soon as he possibly can. So there's that. And then Wynn is interesting. Report out. They've been out there rumored to sell, right? Like this has been going around for a while. At least from this standpoint, from the standpoint of operating right now, they've actually kind of turned things around. Their revenue is up. Their EBITDA, their losses are down right now. So they've actually kind of turned things around by reining in costs and looking toward not quite profitability, obviously, but to a world where they're doing a little better in that. So they're selling perhaps a business that is a little more attractive right now, if indeed they are trying to sell the business right now. So that's what I saw from the four, some of these big sports betting brands. And I don't know if Adam saw anything else out there that he thought was noteworthy.
A couple of things that I just did notice since you just brought up the Wynn stuff. I don't know if this was a conscious decision or if this was just kind of just happened or organically or something along the way. But I have heard of people betting more at Wynn strictly because their numbers have been different than other people's numbers. Like there has been, perceived value on some certain different markets and things like that. And people who I know that didn't even have a Wynn account had opened Wynn accounts and started betting at those just because, again, the guys that are price conscious and who are looking for, the best numbers and the best markets and things like that, we're finding some of those at Wynn. Again, don't know if that was a conscious decision or if that just happened, kind of organically that they were putting up different numbers than other people. And Adam, my big question for you is, what is Cooper Manning going to do now? Like that's who I'm really worried about. I'm not really worried about JB Smoove. Like he's got stuff going on, man. And he's going to be fine. What is Cooper Manning going to do?
Well, keep in mind that Caesar did say that Cooper was his favorite. So there could be maybe a casino greeting job down the line for Cooper somewhere, standing outside the fountains and welcoming people in Las Vegas. Slightly inside baseball stuff here with the Wynn thing as well, if we're going to talk about WynnBET. And I'll give my impressions overall on some of the earnings stuff. But to what you just said, Matt, who's doing the trading matters, right? And if you look at the team that they've assembled over at WynnBET, some guys who've been in the circa operation before, and those are obviously guys who are very conscious of prices, who are going to try to find that edge where they can. So maybe Wynn has a way to at least make itself known locally, and then maybe beyond that, as sort of in that circa range of catering to a certain type of player. Now, beyond that, the FanDuel thing I think is notable for this reason. They have the biggest gaming-based company behind them that is not based on land-based operations, right? With Paddy Power Betfair, it's not like BetMGM or Caesars where this is just one amenity among many within the overall gaming and hospitality operation, right? Most of what's under the Paddy Power Betfair Flutter umbrella is online gaming, right? And so you have a company that is supported by operations elsewhere in the world, whereas right now, you have DraftKings going it alone, trying to, raise where it can. And at this point, probably not going to be able to raise a lot more until it shows a better path to profitability. And Wynn, as we just mentioned, if you guys remember when we talked about at the beginning of 2022, we said, what are some of the bigger stories that came out of last year and so on? And I mentioned the fact that Wynn looking to sell was sort of a canary in a coal mine of people looking at profit and loss a little bit more than they had been. That's the biggest takeaway from all of these calls, I think, is that the market is changing. The market is clearly in a mode where if you are a mid-tier, second or third tier operator, you have to be thinking about, how do I get through the next couple of years, right? We heard this a little bit from Chris Grove, our former founder here, that it's going to be an interesting time for those companies. And I think everything you just heard during earnings call season is going to drive that home in terms of how can you cut costs, keep it either to the point where you survive the next few years or you make yourself a more attractive M&A target because for instance, and we didn't even put this on the rundown, guys, but Fanatics is trying to get in California. We have a story coming out about exactly how is that going to happen, because Fanatics doesn't have a license anywhere right now, and you have to have 10 licenses in order to play in California. And that, I think, brings the M&A question right back in, because Fanatics has the money to go buy one of these mid-tier operators that already has skins in a number of states to get itself eligible for California, where it's pushing the online ballot measure.
They just got confused a little bit, Adam. It's like they're like, we got licenses with MLB, we got licenses with NHL,
yeah,
we got those aren't the licenses you're talking about. But
these are not the droids you're seeking. Yeah.
One of the things I think will be fairly interesting too, with the kind of choices that are made here over the next 18 months or so. This is anecdotally, but I do think that this is fairly significant from a casual bettor standpoint. So obviously, Louisiana opened up recently. I have a bunch of friends who are now betting legally for the first time. Some of them dabbled offshore and things like that, but betting legally and more regularly because it's legal on a regular basis. None of them were really all that interested in sign-up bonuses, to be perfectly honest with you. And like, I think that us being in the bubble, like, we are like, oh, I would take advantage of the $2,000 free bet or the $5,000 whatever, and this, that, and the other, and all that. Like, they were not worried about that at all. The things that's been working for them is just these like goofy retention stuff, like the odds boosts on will player XYZ hit a home run today, and like all the different things like that. And so I'm wondering if the books are going to also start to kind of figure that out, that maybe we don't need to lose all this money up front with, these big sign up bonuses and different things like that. And it might just behoove us to throw, Aaron Judge hit a home run today and boost it up to plus 225 or something, or plus 255, and just have them, feel like they're getting more once we've already got them and stuff. So just, again, anecdotally, but like, that's the type of stuff that they talk about to me. That's the type of stuff that gets them excited, not the, the $1,000 free bet or the X amount of playthrough that you got to get your $2,000 or whatever it might be.
Just to add to your point there, Matt, and I'll turn it back over to you, Dustin. Retention, right? We're talking retention, right? And we still have a number of major state launches that are coming up. And so, for as long as we're talking about Ohio, potentially California, if Florida ever opens, Texas, et cetera, I think the tried and true playbook of that major spend is still going to be out there when it comes to bringing in new customers. When it comes to retention, though, I do think that, what you're saying, Matt, makes a lot of sense in terms of a test case for what it might cost to keep people around, which will not be nearly as much as what it costs to bring them in.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. There's that stuff is cool. That's what keeps you engaged in the product, right? You don't need just free money being thrown at you. Although, like even here, I get a little bit of free money from DraftKings to do single game parlays. Thankfully, not touted to me by cousin Sal. We're not sure we're even going to get into that. That was a whole mess this week too. But yeah, it's like there's little things like that. The product and the retention part of it. You don't need to like give $1,000 every day to do that. Right. Once you're in like the product and you have just engaging content and ways to bet. It's cool. It's cool stuff for sure, and that is the future of this. And we make fun of. I like to make fun of the Overs Club at Barstool, but there's some amount of those people who love getting this old looking jacket that's Portnoy branded, and like people like it. Like that's the kind of stuff. Like looking for edges to keep people in the door without spending zillions of dollars is definitely part of the future of the sports betting ecosystem.
Absolutely. Adam, let's talk. We just had some fun conversations about some of these things that are going on. Well, let's take it down a notch here. Let's talk a little bit about Ohio.
So we know that Ohio's law that was passed this year after a long 2 years of deliberation says that the market must launch by January 1st, 2023. Now, I'm among friends here. I'm among fellow journalists. Journalists know well, you can have 3 weeks to write the story, but you're really probably going to get the bulk of it done the night before the deadline, right? That's just the way journalists tend to work. And I don't know that it's that different in governments, because what we heard from the regulator today in Ohio is that it's not going to launch much before January 1st, 2023, if not on January 1st, 2023. Part of what they discussed was the fact that it's the largest ever expansion of gaming in Ohio, that you're going to be launching a number of different gaming options at one time. They discussed the fact that there could be as many as 3,000 applications for sports betting in Ohio, which is largely based on lottery retailers being able to offer sports betting kiosks. Keep one thing in mind. and this is just my own opinion, if you're already approved to sell lotto tickets, you should already be approved to have a sports betting kiosk inside your gas station. It's not going to be any different if it's just having one machine versus another machine. So I don't know that that should necessarily be an excuse that we buy from the state of Ohio. We had started to think, because it looked like the applications were going to be open a little bit sooner than expected, that maybe they would be here to capture some of the regular season for football. But it looks like it's going to be maybe week 17, 18 that it covers along with the NFL playoffs.
And Dustin, I don't think I'm wrong here in saying Ohio would be the biggest fish that is imminent, correct? I mean, like, obviously we believe something's going to get done in Texas, but they don't meet until next year, et cetera, et cetera. So like, we know there's bigger fish out there, but of anything that's imminent, Ohio would be it, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Population wise, the things that are locked and loaded and ready to go. It's bigger than Maryland, Kansas. We think it is coming real soon too. But it's interesting because I feel like I've been crying wolf for years, but like Maryland, which is still have no idea when it's going to launch. Ohio took all this, like literally it's going to be more like a year. When I saw Arizona and like in Indiana and states like that go from law to implementation, that was, I thought, going to be the outlier. And what we're seeing in Ohio is like getting regulations up, getting people vetted, everything. I thought it was going to be more like this, and we're going to see slow rollout. So, we could, I mean, it does seem like a long time. Like, you're not reinventing the wheel at this point anywhere in the U.S., right? You have a model. Everybody's been licensed. You're piggybacking on that. They're obviously going to do their own homework, but it's not like you're carving stone for the first time. Like, so it does seem slow, but this is also kind of what I expected out of the rollout of U.S. sports betting, and this has been more the exception than the rule to have this slow burn.
Well, Dustin, about Maryland, we do have an update from today, actually. I just want to make sure it gets thrown into the podcast. Source telling our Pat Evans, who's been covering Maryland, that he does not expect them to make the 2023 Super Bowl. He thinks that it'll be into 2023 before this gets done. So there is one place in the country with the chisels and the stone tablets out, and it is Maryland as it tries to reinvent the process of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and when it comes to giving out sports betting licenses.
So we have an awesome opinion piece up over at Legal Sports Report written by our friend across the pond over there, Brad Allen. And by the way, free piece of advice here for you, Adam. If you want to really blow these articles up, there should be an audio version to these articles where like Brad just reads them to you in his beautiful British accent, which I was fortunate enough to talk to Brad this morning, and it was just as glorious today as it has been over the last couple of years. So, I mean, just, free piece of advice, maybe have him read his articles and people can just click and listen to it audibly. But on whether ESPN may or may not have missed the boat in this whole picture here, because we talk about, hey, look, there was the blitz. The blitz is kind of starting to back off a little bit. Does that benefit ESPN? Maybe not. Maybe some of the spending now getting cut back actually, shrinks their opportunity to get in because these companies may be able to last longer, et cetera, et cetera. But it was good in weighing all kind of the angles here on this, Dustin. And, we've talked a ton on this podcast about ESPN, and we were saying if there was anybody left out there that could be a game changer, it would be ESPN. It's ubiquitous with now at this point, every single sport. They've got every sport on some sort of network or whatever with all of that. So what did you take from the article, and what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What is your kind of opinion on everything?
Yeah, great read for Brad, number one. Number two, I would definitely pay to listen to Brad read his stories. That's in the LSR Plus subscription model that we're working on. Absolutely. I mean, the started off with a tweet in the industry about whether it's missed the party. It seems like everybody agrees it's missed the party on the marketing spend, as we've just talked about. Lots of marketing spend pulling back. They have deals with DraftKings and Caesars, but didn't do the huge flashy deal where you kind of have this all over the place. Like we've seen major media outlets go exclusive, and that's all they promote. And they're not doing that really. I mean, there's some branding, and it is what it is. And it's not like necessarily life-changing money for ESPN so far. There's the report from Wall Street Journal that they were looking to license their brand. I feel like that's kind of over. I don't see anybody like they're floating it at $3 billion. Who right now with the market, how it's changed and where it's sitting right now, who's going to pay $3 billion just to license the ESPN name to run a sportsbook? the FanDuel and DraftKings have their own brands. Like maybe somebody smaller, but they don't have that kind of money sitting around just to leverage the brand. So what Brad gets into, and this is the bulk of the story, is the fact that ESPN can still just be a sports book. They can go partner with somebody for tech, or like just be a sports book. That is the path to them, and that's not over. This is not written. And I would agree and argue that ESPN still has a huge chance to leverage that if they, if they start committing now-ish. They can't just. This isn't all going on forever and ever, because we still know there's this huge amount of customer acquisition right when things launch. But we still have California, Texas, Florida still out there that have not launched. So ESPN gets a sports book up and running, could take a critical mass of those states, and then I think ESPN has something. But I think it isn't over. The party is not over. They can still do this, but I don't think they can just sit on the sidelines into perpetuity. They have to start being ready for this world. Again, we can go back in history. DraftKings started being ready for the world of sports betting a year before PASPA even felt, and they positioned themselves really well and ended up being number 2 in market share largely in the U.S. So I think ESPN has a path to doing this. Some of the paths have maybe dried up, but there is still this one large path of them becoming an actual sports book somehow in addition to their brand, and I think that will work and has a chance to really give them a boost on the back end.
I do as well. I mean, I think that opportunity is going to come to fruition in some way, shape, or form, and I think, again, probably like not in the not too distant future, probably sometime in the next 24 months. I think that manifests in some way, shape, or form. And Adam, one of the opinions I saw kind of floated whenever I was doing some research on this was saying like, well, but they're going to lose the revenue of the people that are paying them money to advertise with them if they open their own thing, and et cetera, et cetera. And I actually don't agree with that, because if you're DraftKings, FanDuel, PointsBet, well, I say PointsBet, they have an NBC deal, but you get my point. I mean, if you're one of these sports books or something, like, your best way to still reach a potential customer is still going to be via ESPN, right? I mean, it's still going to be via a sports network that is reaching sports fans, while fans are watching sports games, And so unless ESPN just made the business decision on their own that they're not going to take money from what would be then at that point potential competitors, I actually don't think that revenue stream dries up for them at all. I think that if you're these other companies, you don't have a choice but to buy ads from ESPN.
Well, Matt, I'll give an example of a place that we've both worked with, VSiN. After VSiN was acquired by DraftKings, there were months in there where we were still reading ads for other sports books, right? It's not like other sports books looked at the fact and said that this network that reaches a target audience was acquired by a competitor and we no longer want to advertise with them. Like, of course, they still want to be out on those airwaves that make the most sense for them. To the point of Brad's article here and the idea of, has ESPN missed the boat? I happen to look at this and think that ESPN has happened into a good situation when maybe it didn't intend to say we're going to just sit this out for the first 4 years of legal sports betting, right? I don't know that I believe that ESPN had a calculated path to say, let's just wait for the prices to drop. I do think, like Dustin said, because it's an enormous Disney enterprise, that there really wasn't the same sense of urgency for them to get in. But I do think that the ESPN now does have a number of interesting opportunities. I'm just going to throw some stuff against the wall, and I think any or all of these things make some level of sense, right? Does ESPN try to pick just the right point in a DraftKings vulnerability situation, if we want to go all the way back in time to ESPN and DraftKings, and say, could there be a chance for them to acquire DraftKings at a discount, maybe sometime in the next couple of years, depending on how things play out? Could there be a chance for them to be the right place for 365 to find a way to lower its cost of getting into the U.S. market, right? Could there be some sort of strategic alliance there between ESPN and Bet365? And honestly, think about what that would do to the market if those two, like basically the biggest sports book in the world and the biggest sports brand in the world, figured out a way to come into this market. That would be the true one game changer. I don't know that I see ESPN buying up a PointsBet tech stack the same way that they would with maybe a larger operator, because I don't really see what that gets them. Right. I mean, it's not like you're getting a major customer database. It's not like you're getting technology that has proven to be that far above and beyond everybody else, unless this new PointsBet, basically they're trying to do a no rejection, live at all times, no latency kind of system for live betting, and that could be something that I think would be interesting down the line. But okay,
Right.
Is that more interesting than what 365 already has, which is the most proven live betting technology in the world? So yeah, I think it's a really interesting study. I think the article will surmise largely that no, ESPN hasn't necessarily missed the boat when it comes to this, because we're only 4 years into this market.
The last caveat I'll get to put a bow on this is the only thing that gives me pause is so far what Fox Sports has done. Fox, it's obviously not one-to-one comparison between Fox Sports and ESPN, but Fox Bet, we have Fox is a good brand. They have this free-to-play game. They have a show on FS1 every day. Fox Bet is an also-ran. We never even talk about them on this show. Again, I'm not trying to say Fox is the same as ESPN, but we have this model of a media organization trying to push that. Now, some of this is because Fox Bet is also under the Flutter umbrella of FanDuel. They don't have to do this, but it's the one thing that gives me pause is that I see Fox Bet just an absolute, barely even worth mentioning in most markets, because it's not. Now ESPN obviously go all in and try to promote the brand and the sports book. So, but the model we have is that, okay, we've seen Fox Bet with the support of Fox Sports, and again, a pretty robust free-to-play game that, again, Brad mentions in the story, that gets a lot of people using it, that is not translated into to a great customer acquisition tool. Now, maybe it will be in future states that we mentioned earlier, but it's one thing that gives me pause. But I'm with Adam, and basically what the article surmises that it's not over. ESPN has a chance to be a big player still in all this.
Adam, I think you were probably thinking the same thing I was with that. I mean, and while you said it's not apples to apples, there doesn't. I mean, I think the big differentiator here is just the sports rights, right? I mean, Fox really has to try. I mean, they have the NFL, but it's basically they only have the NFL and the NFL on Sundays to try to reach potential customers and try to get people to tune in. With ESPN's catalog of baseball, basketball, now they have hockey, they've got college football, they've got the NFL, they literally have every single thing possible out there to try. They got the UFC. They literally have every single type of sporting event where they could market for free to these different customers out there. So I think that is a big differentiator, though, between kind of the Fox and the ESPN brand, is just the fact that Fox has to just try and maximize the 17 Sundays that they get to get people through their NFL partnership, whereas ESPN could reach people multiple times on a daily basis through a multitude of different sports.
Well, the most important thing when it comes to Fox Bet is to keep in mind that the reason Fox Bet is failing right now in the United States is because of Flutter. And that is not to drag Flutter and say they've done anything wrong. Everything with the Fox Bet situation goes back to the lawsuit between Flutter and Fox Bet at the moment, and the disagreement they have about Fox/Star's right to buy more of FanDuel. And that really is, I mean, Flutter is not going to go out of its way to promote the Fox Bet brand, while Fox Bet is suing Flutter to try to get a bigger piece of what it believes is its rights to buy in at a lower price than what Flutter wants it to be able to buy in at. So I'm not saying otherwise Fox Bet would be a juggernaut, but if we're going to look for one reason why that brand is not succeeding, it's because its parent company is like, so we've got FanDuel, it's doing pretty well, and you're suing us. So we're not really in any hurry to make you any bigger than you need to be.
All right, Adam, as we do always, take us home. State Roundup.
State Roundup. Let's start in Missouri, where all you're going to do is show me failure. They have failed in 2022 to pass a bill in the Show Me state. Looked good for a while, and then we started talking about VLTs. No, not vegan lettuce and tomato. No, video lottery terminals. We are talking about ostensibly slot machines in Missouri. This discussion got hung up in the Senate. Basically, one senator was filibustering, a bunch of others were filibustering back, and what we did was get to the end of the session with nothing done in Missouri. So, hey, Kansas, you got a chance to bring in some folks from Missouri. If you get up and running in the fall, which is what it's looking like in Kansas, so Missouri's dead for the year. Minnesota, we thought might be dead for the year. In fact, we were kind of prepping a story to say they're running out of time. It's got to get done by Monday. And then all of a sudden today, a hearing popped up on the Senate side in the Finance Committee, and maybe they're going to try to get this thing pushed through. There is major disagreement between the House, which is behind a plan to have tribal exclusivity for sports betting, and the Senate, which wants to open it up to the commercial market. So don't take the hearing as a sign that everything's going to get done. But I was much more of the mind that the Senate was going to bury this thing in committee and never let it out. It's at least going to get a chance to see the light of day this time in Minnesota. North Carolina is actually kind of getting re-ramped up on a bill that had a chance last year. They're going to get into beginning this week, actually, in North Carolina. Of course, we have retail betting at a couple of tribal casinos in North Carolina, but we don't have statewide mobile. Between the colleges in North Carolina and having a couple of professional sports teams, it's a sneaky good market when it comes to potentially getting North Carolina to mobile sports betting. So that is within the realm of possibility this year as well.
Guys, as always, everything we talk about here on the podcast, you can find over at LegalSportsReport.com. If you're watching us on the YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you're just listening to us audibly, we do appreciate any, subscription, ratings, reviews, all of that stuff that you do over on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher. We do appreciate all of that. You should follow Dustin on the Twitter machine at Dustin Gowker. You should follow Adam at Adam Candy, 2 E's. Know why? It's absolutely free. Just smash the button. It's the last time I'm going to tell you guys. For Adam, for Dustin, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.